Because I can't do anything about what happened yesterday or what's going to happen tomorrow.
When you picture Willie Nelson, you probably see the laid-back legend, the peaceful grandfather of country music. He's the smiling, braided icon who built a career on peace, love, and a notorious cloud of smoke. This is the man who collaborated with everyone from Johnny Cash to Snoop Dogg, the ultimate musical diplomat who brought hippies and rednecks together. But behind that calm demeanor, there are whispers. For decades, rumors have swirled about a different side of Willie's side that didn't just disagree with some of music's biggest stars, but held deep, principled objections to them. The internet is filled with tales of feuds, rivalries, and quiet grudges. Today, we're not just repeating those rumors, we're investigating them. We're exploring the 6 bands and artists that Willie Nelson supposedly couldn't stand. But more. Importantly, we're going to separate the myth from the man. Was Willie Nelson secretly holding bitter grudges? Or were these conflicts something else entirely? The truth is far more complex and fascinating than any simple story of hatred. You won't believe who is at the top of this list, or the real story behind their legendary falling out. The first name on our list is maybe the most shocking, Waylon Jennings. Willie and Waylon, their names are synonymous with the outlaw country movement. They were partners, collaborators, and by all accounts, brothers. So where does the story of a feud come from? The rumor mill claims that beneath the friendship there was an intense, bitter rivalry, and that their egos were constantly clashing over money, status, and music. Willie himself once said, "Waylon and I were like 2 old married people. Fought about everything, and if he was for it, I was against it." This constant bickering, the story claims, was a sign of a deeper animosity. The supposed smoking gun is a song. In 1975, Waylon Jennings released Bob Wills Is Still the King. It was recorded live in Austin on Willie's home turf. The lyrics have a very pointed line. It's the home of Willie Nelson, the home of Western swing. He'll be the first to tell you, Bob Wills is still the king. On the surface, it sounds like a friendly shout-out. But legend has painted it as a direct shot. Waylon feeling Willie was getting too much credit for the Austin scene. Supposedly wrote the song to put his friend in his place. Waylon even admitted he wrote it because he was mad at Willie over a booking disagreement and wanted to get a rise out of him. But did this amount to hate? The evidence overwhelmingly says no. Their relationship was far too deep for that. Met in a Phoenix restaurant long before they were famous and bonded instantly over their frustration with the Nashville machine. They created the Outlaw movement together and their 1976 album, *Wanted. The Outlaws' was the first country album ever to go platinum. So what about the fighting? It was real, but it was the friction of 2 incredibly passionate and stubborn artists pushing each other. They were brothers, and like brothers, they fought. And the song, it wasn't a diss track, it was a good-natured jab. When Waylon played it for Willie, expecting a fight, Willie just smiled and agreed. In his memoir, Willie wrote that he wasn't going to give Waylon the argument he was looking for because he loved the song and agreed with it. As far as Willie was concerned, Bob Wills was the king. Their bond was an unbreakable outlaw marriage. Next up is another giant of country music, Merle Haggard. For decades, Willie and Merle were seen as 2 sides of the same outlaw coin. Duet on Poncho and Lefty is iconic. So it's almost impossible to imagine them secretly despising each other. Yet the rumors persist. The story goes that their friendship fractured over personal differences, mainly Willie's famous love for marijuana. The most damaging rumor is that Haggard, in a moment of dismissiveness, called Willie more of a mascot than a musician. This alleged comment, it's claimed, was a deep betrayal that led Willie to cut all ties. This narrative is powerful, but when you look for the evidence, the story completely falls apart. The mascot quote is nowhere to be found in any credible interview or biography. It appears to be a fabrication, A piece of gossip repeated so often it started to sound true. The reality of their relationship was one of deep, enduring respect. They met at a poker game at Willie's house in the early 1960s and remained close for over 50 years. Willie once said of Merle, "He was my brother, my friend. I will miss him." Merle reciprocated that feeling, once telling an interviewer, "I love Willie and I think Willie loves me." Far from being estranged, they continued to work together their whole lives. Their final collaboration, the 2015 album Django and Jimmy, was a celebrated success. The song Unfair Weather Friend from that album is a perfect summary of their relationship, a song about being there for each other through thick and thin. When Merle Haggard passed away in 2016, Willie dedicated the rest of his tour to his friend's memory. There was no feud. There was only the bond of two brothers. Our third entry takes us to the polished, high-octane arena of 90s new country, with Brooks and Mart's. Kix Brooks and Ronnie Dunn dominated the charts with a slick sound and an image that borrowed from the outlaw aesthetic Willie helped create. And according to the rumors, that was the problem. The story goes that Willie saw Brooks and Dunn as corporate products, a betrayal of everything the outlaw movement stood for. He supposedly resented their use of outlaw imagery without the genuine struggle behind it. The narrative is that Willie didn't just dislike their music. He despised what they represented, the commercialization of the spirit he fought to protect. This is a compelling story because it frames the conflict as a battle for the soul of country music. But where's the evidence of personal hatred? It's true that Willie has been a critic of the slick Nashville sound his whole career. There is no record of him ever expressing personal animosity toward Brooks and Dunn specifically. His was a critique of a system, not an attack on two individuals. When asked what he thought of modern Nashville acts, Willie once just laughed and said, "Honestly, I don't listen to it, so I don't know." That's not the passionate anger of a man who hates another artist. It's the indifference of someone operating in a different musical universe. Willie's philosophy has always been one of inclusion. To suggest he harbored a deep personal hatred for Brooks and Dunn goes against his entire history. While he may have disagreed with their musical approach, there is no evidence to support the claim that Willie Nelson hated Brooks and Dunn. His was a war against a sound, not against the men who sang the songs. This next alleged feud is probably the most politically charged. It involves the late, great Toby Keith. Its brand of post-9/11's patriotism often stood in stark contrast to Willie's peaceful, hippie worldview. The rumor is that the two were in a quiet, Cold War rooted in political values that made friendship impossible. The narrative claims that Willie, a lifelong peace advocate, was fundamentally opposed to Toby Keith's more aggressive brand of patriotism. The story claims Willie saw Keith's music as exploiting patriotism for radio airplay. It's a plausible story given their very real and well-documented political differences. But then, you're confronted with one massive chart-topping fact: their 2003 duet, Beer for My Horses. Not only did they collaborate, but the song was a colossal hit. It spent 6 weeks at #1, was certified platinum, and won an ACM award for Best Video. Willie even co-starred in the music video and a feature-length film they based on the song. This collaboration powerfully contradicts the entire narrative of a feud. The story behind the song debunks it even further. Keith wrote the song and immediately thought of Willie for the duet. When Keith called Nelson and told him the title, Nelson's response was, "I don't even need to hear it. I'm in." That doesn't sound like a man who harbors deep animosity. While they may have disagreed on politics, they shared a mutual respect. To suggest they were locked in a Cold War is to fundamentally misunderstand Willie Nelson. For our fifth entry, the rumor alleges that Willie Nelson held a special contempt for Hank Williams Jr. and his band, believing they were betraying the legacy of one of his personal heroes, Hank Williams, Sr. The story goes that Willie, who revered Hank Sr., was disturbed by what he saw as the commercialization of that legacy by Hank Jr. He supposedly saw Hank Jr. and his band as co-conspirators in degrading a sacred tradition. This wasn't just a musical disagreement. It was a cultural betrayal. This narrative is compelling because it taps into Willie's well-known reverence for country music's architects. However, the leap from principled disagreement to personal hatred isn't supported by the public record. In fact, we see mutual respect and collaboration. In 2003, Willie Nelson and Hank Williams Jr. shared the stage at the CMA Awards for an incredible tribute to Johnny Cash, standing on stage together to honor. A fallen friend is hardly the action of two men in a bitter, unspoken feud. Furthermore, they collaborated on a recording of Hank Williams Sr.'s own song, Mind Your Own Business, alongside Reba McEntire and Tom Petty, participating in a project that directly celebrates Hank Sr.'s music suggests a shared respect for his legacy. The evidence of a personal, hateful feud simply isn't there. Their relationship appears to be one of professional respect. For our final entry, we're not talking about a single artist, but an entire institution, the Nashville Music Machine and the session bands that powered it. This isn't a rumor about a personal feud, but a deep philosophical opposition that defined Willie's early career. The story is that Willie Nelson hated the Nashville studio system. In the 1960s, Nashville was dominated by the Nashville sound, a slick, polished style created by elite session musicians. The rumor is that Willie saw these musicians as musical mercenaries who homogenized country music. This supposed hatred, the story goes, is what drove him to flee back to Texas in the early 1970s. Of all the claims on this list, this one comes closest to the truth, but hate is still the wrong word. It was never about personal animosity. Conflict was with the system itself. He was an idiosyncratic artist, and he found the rigid confines of the Nashville sound to be suffocating. Producers constantly tried to make him conform. The frustration of writing massive hits for others, like Patsy Cline's Crazy, while struggling to get the establishment to believe in him as a solo artist, is what fueled his decision to leave. When his Tennessee house burned down in 1970, he saw it as a sign to head back to the creative freedom of Austin, Texas. So, did he hate the session bands? No. He was frustrated by a system that wouldn't let him be himself. His departure from Nashville wasn't an act of hatred, but an act of artistic self-preservation. He wasn't running from people. He was running towards freedom. So, after digging through the rumors and the facts, what's the real story? Does the evidence show a man full of secret feuds? Or does it reveal a principled artist who fought for his vision of country music? Which of these myths surprised you the most? Let us know in the comments below. And if you enjoy deep dives that separate country music, fact from fiction, make sure you hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell. In the end, the legend of Willie Nelson's hate list tells us more about our fascination with feuds than it does about the man himself. In story after story, the rumors of bitter grudges and personal animosity turned out to be just that. Rumors. What we found instead were stories of complex, brotherly rivalries, like his relationship with Waylon Jennings, where friction and love were two sides of the same coin. We found stories of deep, lifelong friendships, like the one he shared with Merle Haggard, that were completely misrepresented by gossip. And most of all, we found a man of deep artistic conviction who stood against the commercialization of his genre, not out of hatred for other artists, but out of a profound love for the soul of country music. The real Willie Nelson isn't a man of hate. He's a man of conviction. He fought systems, not people. He challenged conformity, not colleagues. His legacy isn't one of quiet feuds, but of a loud and clear rebellion for artistic freedom. And that's a much better story to tell